Well everyone, this is the big one, something I've wanted to do for years, drive an AE86 on Mount Akina from Initial D. It's going to be fun. This is though going to be a bit of a long video as I'm including full driver's point of view runs up and down the mountain. So I'll be putting a time index reference in the description for those of you who want to click ahead to specific content. But I really enjoyed this trip, so I hope you'll come along with me for the full thing. Here's the car itself. You can see it's been given a bit of an Initial D look to it with the carbon effect bonnet, though without the Watanabe style wheels that you'd normally associate with the Fujiwara car. And under the bonnet, as expected, is the classic Toyota 4AGE 16 valve 1.6 4-pot. Very nice little engine. The interior of the car is a little shabby, but pretty much in line with most AE86s you see knocking about, and it's had a replacement driver's seat and an aftermarket steering wheel fitted to it. First things first, getting from Tokyo out to Gunma required a bit of a highway track, not exactly the optimal application for a car like this, but it blatted along quite happily. Our destination is the town of Shibukawa at the foot of Mount Haruna, the dormant volcano on which Mount Akina is based. And it's a beautiful day, so we set a good pace on the Kanetsu Expressway and just cruised along. In Shibukawa, on the approach to the mountain, you'll find D's Garage, an Initial D themed cafe decorated with all kinds of memorabilia, from race queen outfits, which yes, can be hired for an impromptu photo shoot, to car models, t-shirts and other souvenir items for sale. Along with, inevitably for a cafe, various Initial D themed food. I had a black and white Trueno inspired curry meal, and then took a brief look at the collection of modified cars that were parked outside. Then it's back in the 86 and off up the final couple of miles to the start of the mountain pass. We are on Mount Akina, or Mount Haruna as it's really called, in an AE86 Trueno. Oh yes! Now, before anyone complains about me driving like an old granny on these roads, it's not my car, and there's a couple of interesting rattles from the suspension. So I'm not going to be pushing it, I'm not going to be playing silly buggers. I'm just going to be enjoying being here in an 86 on the Initial D mountain. Now this particular 86, yeah, it's not factory fresh. There's definitely some rattles down the front. The interior trim has got some interesting marks and tears on it. And on top of that, they fitted an aftermarket Recaro seat, which is very much set up for someone about a foot shorter than me, so I am properly squeezed in here, and that does not work well if you're trying to hustle a car around. And the other problem is, every time I come down and go into a tight corner,
I get a distinct rattle from somewhere in the front suspension. So it sounds like something's a little bit loose back there. Missed the gear, whoops. But I don't know. It's all about the experience though. I've been here before, but only in a tiny little K car, which with a CVT gearbox was not exactly built for steaming up mountain roads. And these are tight mountain roads. Despite some evidence of a few skid marks from people, I don't know how much people actually come out to have a play on here, because it's definitely got things like speed humps now, and if the speed humps don't slow you down, there's an awful lot of geriatric drivers here. Here's the speed humps to prevent you going too hard into this corner. And there's my suspension rattle, also preventing me going too hard into any corners. So as you can see, the famous 5 hairpin turns are not somewhere for razzing a car around nowadays. I guess this is the point where too much fame can be a bad thing. I wonder if they installed these after they had a few too many people deciding to come and pay a visit here after reading some Initial D manga. Now this road is, as it is in Initial D, a route up to a lake at the top of the mountain. It's a Caldera Lake, and there are hotels around there which Takumi would deliver his tofu to. I haven't quite managed to get any tofu myself. I have got myself a nice tofu pudding from D Garage, the Initial D themed cafe down at the bottom of the hill. So I have substituted that for now, and I will have that at the top of the hill, and everything will feel very nerdy and otaku. You see, now we've caught up with some people here. We've got someone obviously driving up in his minivan to go and have a nice look at the lake, and someone in a utility van off to do his workman-like stuff, so we'll have to drive at their pace. You can see on the left of the road the ditches. Oh, thank you very much, people. It's very nice of you. Give them a little hazard flash. Anyway, as I was saying, you can see at the side of the road the drainage ditches, which you can do your gutter hooking if you wish to. Although from the sounds of my front suspension, someone in this car might have already tried that one. This is a deceptively tight corner because that's a forest road on the right. The corner itself comes round like this. Hence they got the mirror on the corner. And here again, around we go. Yeah. Bit of a dig in that barrier there, someone's hidden off. And again. Yeah, there's still some evidence that people have come up here to have a play, and perhaps had a bit more of a play than was wise. And as we come up here, we're about 3/4 of the way up. There's a nice observation area, so you can sit and look out over the view over Gunma. And if the trees aren't too overgrown, you can actually see people going around the hairpins further below you, which is quite a nice view. As you can see, I'm getting quite a bad reflection off my rather broken, cracked dashboard, but I can understand why I see so many people with those rug things, like a dark coloured tea towel over the dash. Although one advantage I do have is that I'm tall enough is that I can sort of see over the reflection, so it's not impeding my vision that much. Okay, this barrier's had a bit of a bad time of it, haven't they? As you can see, the road isn't that tight. There's a good 2 lanes here. It's nice and clear. It's got pretty good visibility. But I'd imagine if you start coming down here carrying a lot of speed, it's one of these roads that's going to tighten up on you very, very quickly. Another small turn out here, although I don't think you can really get much of a view from that one thanks to the trees growing up next to it. And here we are at the top. On the right you can see that's the staging area. That's the point where everyone starts their run in Initial D. And if we carry on further along here, we head up to Lake Haruna, where I'm going to have my tofu pudding. And on the way, they have quite an interesting little thing. They've made use of the rumble strips along the road. So the rumble strips run all the way across the road, and if you go across them at the speed limit, it plays a tune at you. So you get a musical road.
At the lake, formed in the old volcano caldera, there's a cable car that you could ride to a small shrine at the peak, but with the 86 parked up, I just treated myself to the Fujiwara Trueno themed tofu pudding, which I'd bought at Dee's garage earlier. Then it's off back to get some photos of the car at the famous start line area of the course, before beginning the run down the hill.
developed a small fan club here at the Akina start line, but here we go. Let this biker pass and we're out onto the downhill run. Now, as I said, this car does feel a little bit tired, so I will not be messing around on here, but the biker is setting a perfectly sensible pace, so if we just follow him we should be doing quite nicely. I suspect he might be relatively local, so he knows these corners. I'm not going to be talking much doing this, 'cause, well, I've already had a discussion about the car, and it's more about just enjoying the drive. We've caught up to some slower traffic now, but we ain't here to try and set any lap times. Incidentally, one of the things that isn't clear if you've watched the initial D is that this isn't the only road up the mountain. If you carry on past the lake at the top, it goes down the other side. So it's not the only road, which is something that you kind of get the impression of if you read the manga or watch the anime, that this is the one road up the hill, but it's not. This is probably the more picturesque route, and also it's the famous one, so this is the one that everyone wants to drive on. Although I suppose the benefit of that is that they do seem to maintain it quite well. For a remote mountain road that is kind of out in the middle of nowhere, it does have a pretty nice surface. A few skid marks there, someone's been having a play. You can hear that front suspension rattle there. If you're watching this video and you're thinking, oh, it doesn't look that tight, to be fair, it's not. I've driven tighter roads, and I've driven tighter mountain roads in Japan, and steeper ones too, but it does flow nicely and it's tight enough. We're going down here at a fairly low speed, and you're still noticeably feeling it when you're going into the corners. And I'd imagine, especially at night on this unlit road, you'd really be wanting to pay attention, because if you came down here in the dark and zig when you should have zagged, you are going to make quite a mess of something. Possibly just the Armco, possibly yourself a couple of 100 feet down the mountain if there isn't any. You can see there on the far right that the uphill lane does have slow lane areas, which people seem to be quite good at using to let faster traffic pass. There's always the old tour bus or something in one of the car parks around here, and I imagine getting one of those up through the hairpin bends requires a fair bit of dedication, especially one of the larger ones. Does make you wonder if anyone's ended up in an Italian job situation with one on one of the bends. Again, you can see those gutters on the side there. Some of them are deeper than others. The whole ditch hooking thing, getting that front wheel in the gutter to hook yourself around the corner, works very nicely in the manga, works very nicely in the anime. I'd imagine actually doing it on this road might not work out so well for the underside of your car. Feel there the speed humps they put in on the 5 hairpins. It's an interesting design of speed hump. Rather than being a harsh bump like I'm used to in the UK, it's a series of undulations that basically make you feel like you're in a ship at sea, which does the job of reminding you want to slow down without pummeling the underside of the car. And I have to say, it is definitely preferable to the approach that I get at home. Even if you didn't want to come to this road for the initial D aspect, or indeed for any kind of driving aspect, and you're just coming here for tourism, it's all very scenic, so you don't feel too hard done by if you're following some slower traffic. It's not like it's ruining your day or anything, because you still get to enjoy the view. It's one of these roads that, unless you really know it, you'll always find yourself in the wrong gear. Bit of a lump here. as far as things go, if you're basing this on Initial D, this is the bottom of the hill. It's not actually the bottom of the hill, things go a bit further down from here, but from our perspective we're going to call it that. Right, so we're about to do another go around the hill, but we just come down and turning the car off, it won't start again. Right, well, we appear to have a dead starter motor because the car was running absolutely fine, and now it won't crank. So I think we may have to bump start it. And it's alive! So, I think we've decided that we won't be turning the car back off for the rest of the day. But that could make life interesting at petrol stops, but we'll just have to see how we get on.
With the car kept running to avoid having to repeat this performance, and after a couple more runs up and down the mountain just for fun, it was time to return south and onto the expressway back to Tokyo, getting some pop-up headlight action going through all the tunnels. The length of the journey meant it was dark by the time Tokyo was reached, but it's been a really great day. If you get the chance to do this yourself, and you're either a fan of Initial D or just want to experience an iconic car on the kind of roads it's meant for, I'd highly recommend trying to repeat this experience yourself. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'd really appreciate a thumbs up on it if you did, and if you want to see what else I've been up to with cars, please subscribe below.